Well, if you watched any others of these instructor chats, you'll know that I talk with the instructors for the Photoshop Virtual Summit 4 about their upcoming classes. And today, it's my extreme pleasure to chat with me. So, Dave, one of your classes is called Think Like Photoshop. So, what is that all about? Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. So, yeah, Think Like Photoshop. This is something that I've been mentioning in my classes for an awful long time, is that you'll often hear people say things of what they want to do in Photoshop, and just by the way that they describe it or say it, it already means that perhaps they're going to find it a little more challenging. So here's an example. One of the things to talk about in the class is the number of times people will post a photograph and say, I need to remove that object or remove that person. Well, in Photoshop, we can't really remove something. We have to cover it up to make it look like it was never there. And thankfully, we have lots of ways of doing that, like content-aware fill and healing brush, etc. But my thought process is even just by saying approach it in a different way. Think of covering something up as opposed to removing will make you realize that when you look at some photographs, it's going to be really challenging to cover that element up because you need to use some surrounding pixel information to make that happen. So in some ways, the whole idea of thinking like Photoshop is just to try and be as efficient as possible, and perhaps sometimes realize that a challenge that you're faced with is just too difficult. But again, a lot of it is about efficiency. Awesome. Now, your other class is called Shortcut City. Stop working so hard. So I would imagine that's about using shortcuts in Photoshop. So tell us about the thought process behind this class. Yeah, I've always been kind of a keyboard shortcut junkie, and I guess I would say the reason is because I'm lazy, because I don't want to go to menus, but other people would say you're just being efficient. So let's go with that. But yeah, this class is all about ways to get things done in less time by using keyboard shortcuts. And we're going to talk about the keyboard shortcuts that are built in, that are perhaps obvious because they're under menus. We won't talk about that too much, but we'll start off talking about things like the simplest shortcut of all, which is to use single letters to activate tools, and some of the other examples like that, including ones that aren't written down anywhere. They're not, when you look under a list, you won't see this shortcut anywhere. So we'll share some sort of hidden shortcuts for you, but also we'll talk about one other very important factor, and that is making your own keyboard shortcuts. Because I've always felt it's a lot easier to remember and start implementing shortcuts if they're ones you've created. And that's one of the things we'll focus on as well, is not only the existing shortcuts, but also making your own. I love the idea of not only showing people a lot of the built-in shortcuts, but ones that are hidden, as well as the ability to create your own. Because as you said, it's a lot easier to remember shortcuts when you've made them than when you're trying to remember something from this big laundry list of classes. Great. Well, Dave, thanks so much. Seems weird to say, but thank you, me, for taking the time to chat. My pleasure, and I can't wait for the start of the Photoshop Virtual Summit 4. All right. See you later.